more humble, let's say a Toyota G16E GTS, the inline 3 found in the GR Yaris and GR Corolla, you will see that these two engines use the same technologies: direct fuel injection, variable valve timing and lift, CNC machined intakes. They also use pretty much the same materials: high-grade aluminum silicon alloys for the block and the heads, aluminum pistons, forged steel cranks, sodium-filled exhaust valves. And both engines are largely hand-built by expert technicians. So why does the Ferrari cost 8 times more? Well, you could argue, hey, it's a bigger engine, V12, 6.5 liters, so they need more raw materials. Indeed, the engine does weigh more, but even the highest grade, most expensive aluminum alloys used for making engines, they cost around $8 per kilogram. That gives us $968 for the difference in raw materials. And let's not forget, American-grade engines, they're also big, they need a lot of raw materials, and they make a lot of power, but they don't cost nearly as much as something from Ferrari or Lamborghini. So we have to ask ourselves, what does the rest of all this money buy you? Just a badge? Well, that's the exact question we'll be answering in this video, and we'll answer it while assembling an exquisitely detailed all-metal scale replica of a supercar V12 engine.
You've got two teething babies and one has a taste for shoes. Look at you, ending two teething tantrums in as fast...
And then I'm gonna give away an engine just like this one to one of you. All you have to do to win it is post in the comments the correct answer to a question that I'm gonna ask somewhere in the video. The question is going to be about something that I'm mentioning in this video. So, let's get started. And let's start with the core of the engine block. As I already mentioned, the engine block is cast from aluminum. In the case of Ferrari, that's a proprietary alloy which includes 7% silicone and a trace of iron for improved mechanical integrity in casting. What's pretty interesting is that Ferrari uses in-house sand casting, a process which could be considered archaic by modern standards. It has low tooling costs, making it suitable for low volume production, while at the same time allowing the casting of large and complex structures with low porosity thick sections and the ability to cast thin walls and good overall strength. Another cost driver when relying on sand casting for high complexity and high strength parts are the high levels of scrap produced. Only perfect castings can be accepted. Everything else is scrapped. Inside the block, we have the crankshaft, which is forged steel in case of both the Ferrari and the Toyota G16. The difference is that the G16 revs to 7,000 RPM, whereas the Ferrari F140 HD engine, as present in the current 12 Cilindri, it revs to 9,500 RPM. Remember, forces on the rotating and reciprocating components of the engine are proportional to the square of RPM. In other words, the Ferrari V12 revs 36% higher, but the internals experience 84% more stress. Getting a long and heavy V12 crankshaft to reliably survive 9,500 RPM without twisting or breaking apart is a monumental task. Such a crankshaft must be both as light as possible and as strong as possible. On top,
exactly what makes you think your emotional problems are more important than mine? Question mark? I'm far more crazy and far more knowledgeable than you are. I'm just better at concealing it.
On top of this, it must be balanced to absurd tolerances, and this requires significant time and expertise. Next up we have the pistons and rods. The G16 has steel rods and cast aluminum pistons, whereas the F140 has forged aluminum pistons and titanium rods. Forged pistons are stronger, whereas titanium rods are as strong as steel but noticeably lighter. Reducing the weight and improving the strength of the rotating assembly is absolutely critical for reliably achieving 9,500 RPM.
My opinion won't change. Talk to me next year.
Another item that is a major cost driver in the Ferrari engine is a dry sump system, something that is not present on the Toyota or pretty much any other high-volume engine. Usually reserved for motorsport applications, dry sump systems increase the power output of the engine by reducing pressure in the crankcase, and they also ensure optimal lubrication even in the most extreme of conditions. In case you're interested, I have an entire video on dry sump systems.
If you have one of these, your home's ready for an upgrade. Get the smart central heat pump that warms in winter, cools in summer, and uses up to 4 times less energy. It's quieter, cleaner, and built for every season. Get your instant price in under 2.
Now it's time to proceed over to the cylinder head. Here the Toyota G16 and the Ferrari F140 are remarkably similar. Both are chain drive, double overhead camshaft with 4 valves per cylinder. We have sodium-filled exhaust valves in both engines for reliable high-temperature resilience, together with variable valve timing and lift. Ferrari does take things a step further with hollow camshafts for weight reduction. The lighter something is, the easier it is to spin it up to speed, and reaching 9,500 RPM quickly and reliably requires weight savings wherever possible. Of course, manufacturing strong, long, hollow camshafts is neither cheap nor easy. Next, we head over to the intake manifold, and here we have the next major cost driver for Ferrari. Individual throttle bodies paired with constantly variable intake trumpets. Although various iterations of variable intake ducts exist on car and motorcycle engines, almost all are limited to just a few stages, and they shift between these stages. Ferrari's system is taken directly from previous F1 engines and is both infinitely and constantly variable. It is controlled by an ECU which monitors RPM and throttle position and chooses the optimal trumpet length for that RPM and load combination. This enables two things. The first one is that 80% off-peak torque is available at 2,500 RPM. This is beyond impressive for a naturally aspirated engine. And now we have the question for winning the engine. The question is, what is the percentage of silicon in Ferrari's proprietary aluminum alloy? The second thing made possible by Ferrari's constantly variable intake ducts is something that Ferrari patented, and it's called torque shaping. They use all the electrical and variable systems present on the engine to produce the smoothest and most dramatic torque curve imaginable. To achieve this, they sacrifice a tiny bit of peak torque across a number of points of the rev range, and in exchange, what is created is the most emotional acceleration possible. The car feels like it's always accelerating at any RPM. There's never a feeling that you reached a plateau. Instead, it's never-ending drama that increases exponentially as the RPM rises to the stratospheric 9,500 RPM red line. Obviously, there is an immense amount of research and development behind this technology. And there we have it, one very special V12. So, why is it so expensive? Well, if we add up the cost of the forged pistons and the titanium rods and the hollow camshafts and the continuously variable intakes and the dry sump, we are looking at realistically somewhere between, let's say, 35 to 40,000 euros of extra parts and manufacturing costs. Again, we have a lot of money left over. So, is that finally the value of the badge? Is that what you pay for to get the little prancing horse on your engine and vehicle, just like the people who pay triple digits for 100% cotton t-shirts with Italian surnames? Actually, no. In the case of Ferrari, what you pay for is for the engine to exist.
Charlie's battery is struggling to start, so he went to AutoZone, where an AutoZoner helps him choose a new battery, so he can make the tailgate and
to exist. Allow me to explain. Nobody needs a naturally aspirated V12 producing 830 horsepower. The potential of that engine, its power output and performance, cannot be realized or utilized in 99% of the scenarios by 99% of the drivers. From whichever perspective you look at it, this engine is both pointless and unnecessary. You can make that much power, or even more nowadays, with a V8, or even a V6 with half the cylinders. Just slap some turbos on it. That's exactly what Toyota did with the G16. They added a turbo.
Thank you for provoking me. If you have a real crisis, I will answer. Otherwise, leave me alone till next year.
to make 187 horsepower per liter. Even a hack like me can take a 1.6 to 300 horsepower. You just need a big enough turbo and some readily available aftermarket electronics. On the other hand, Ferrari chose to achieve 830 horsepower in hard mode, naturally aspirated. Why? Because they were never after power numbers. They were after the pinnacle of combustion-induced sensations. They were after emotions. It might sound cheesy, but it's true, because this is an engine that uses everything modern combustion technology has to offer in order to give the driver the maximum enjoyment he can experience. Not the fastest track time or the highest G-forces, but sensations. 99% of the drivers cannot use the potential of this engine, but 100% of the drivers can feel and appreciate the sensations it creates because it has a soundtrack and a throttle response unlike anything else out there. It's different at the very core of its being. The block, the angle between the banks of the block of the V, it's 65 degrees, not 60 like in every other V12. That creates a very slightly different firing interval, which leads to a very special sound. This is an irrational and impractical engine. In order for it to exist, you need the most advanced technologies, together with the most skilled engineers and technicians, the highest quality materials and the most advanced manufacturing techniques, together with an incredible amount of research and development. And then you take the very high total cost of all of these elements and you distribute it over a very small number of engines. The end result is, of course, that we have a very high cost per engine that must be paid in order for this engine to exist. Comparing this engine with a G16 from Toyota doesn't really make sense. It would be perhaps a lot more sensible to compare it to the Lexus LFA, which shows that even a giant like Toyota was unable to deliver peak emotion at reasonable prices. When you want to achieve the pinnacle of something, it is always a story of fighting brutally diminishing returns. Let's say that a reasonably fit person, can run 100 meters in 16 seconds. With some serious training, they can probably reduce that time by 3 seconds to 13 seconds. But reducing that time by another 3 seconds to somewhere around 10 seconds is going to take far more training than for the previous 3 seconds. It's going to take unreal commitment and determination and perseverance and God knows what. And it's like that with engines and with pretty much everything else. As always, thanks a lot for watching. I'll be seeing you soon with more fun and useful stuff on the D4A channel.